Hello and welcome to another episode of TSD Focus, a podcast concerning all things related to the Korean martial art of TSD. Today we have episode number 6 of TSD Focus. I'm Master Steve Paterini, and today we will be talking about basic techniques. In other words, some of the first things you would learn upon joining a TSD Academy and learning the first few things as a white belt. So let me say this first about beginning TSD students, having seen many over my years, that we will often get students who have been successful in other athletic endeavors in their past. They might be good football, baseball players, basketball players, soccer players. They might be used to going into the gym and lifting a lot of weights and have great musculature. And then they come in and we ask them to do things like a low block, a center punch, a front stance, and they find it awkward and they're very stiff, and they find a lot of frustration in the fact that they don't have almost instant success like they might have, again, transferring the skills from being a shortstop to being a soccer player. Martial arts is different. It really is. And the muscles we use are often obscure. I sometimes make comparisons between TSD and yoga in that you could take somebody, again, who's a gym rat or a very successful athlete in other more westernized sports and put them in a yoga class and ask them to do some poses that look on the surface to be something that's so ridiculously simple, and they really struggle. They find that it's difficult, sometimes painful and awkward, and that they don't naturally have that ability to hold those poses and do those things. And often there's a lot of frustration there. It's almost better to come in with kind of a clean slate, and that would include preconceptions from watching martial arts movies and things on TV or on videos of people performing all sorts of great things. Starting as a beginner is a lesson in humility, that is for sure. And I almost to a student in my school talk about how if you're doing it right, it probably hurts more. It probably feels awkward. It probably feels wrong, if that's a way of saying it, at least initially. Over time, these moves will feel natural to you, and that's when you'll start to really understand the beauty of it. But initially, when your teacher shows you the correct form, bending your knee or putting your hand away or doing this or doing that, it's going to feel very awkward, and it's going to take more effort than the way you were probably doing it. Which, again, your instructor would probably have pointed out as being improper technique. So you got to pack your patience, and you got to keep some humility, and I promise you, your instructors will take care of you, and over time, you'll start to understand the reason why you have to do these moves in such specific ways. Now, it is quite likely that the very first technique you will be shown in the TSD lesson would be the low block, which is kind of the, again, original first move. And I can remember as a white belt thinking to myself, geez, they're teaching me a low block. How many people try to kick or punch you in the knee? Or, again, how many people would go for the groin area as their first attack? And it seemed like a strange thing to be the emphasis in the initial technique that I was being taught in my lessons. I was thinking something like a high block or an inside-out block, something that would protect my body and my face a little bit better, would seem a little more practical to me. But, as I have gone through my years, I've started to understand a little bit more about what the low block is and what it means. Second technique you're probably going to learn after that is a center punch, which again is, basic, and pretty much everyone knows how to throw a punch, although you'd be surprised how many people don't even know how to create a proper fist when you first bring them in for a lesson, especially children, which I guess is not a bad thing that they haven't thrown fists as a child. But the low block and the center punch would be the foundational moves. And again, these would probably be taught moving forward in what we call a front stance, which is, again, probably the most common way you're going to be positioning your body and having your legs in a Tang Soo Do form or martial arts. So the low block, again, here's the thing with the low block. And I guess all blocks that we need to consider is before every block, there's a framing motion. Before you extend the hand to block the technique, there's a preparatory situation. And basically, a way I like to tell, again, particularly newer students, is that if the block is going to end up low, your frame is probably up high. And if the block is going to end up high, your frame probably starts out down lower, which gives you the ability to build up some speed and some power to get that block out there. If you throw up a wishy-washy block against a aggressively thrown technique, you're going to get hit. And of course, the purpose of a block is to block and to prevent yourself from being hit. So that preparation, that framing motion, which a lot of people like to shortchange, especially as beginners, it is crucially important for a proper blocking technique, one that has the power and the ability to protect you from that aggressive technique that's being thrown at you. Again, to kind of send the lesson home to a beginning student, often I'll have them in our dojang. We have those interlocking, what we call puzzle mats. They're about 3 feet across, and I'll have them put their toes on the edge of the mat and say, "Okay, jump to the next mat." And they do a standing broad jump, and they can almost all of them can clear one mat, and then I'll say, "Okay, try to clear 2." And from a standing dead start, occasionally you get a very athletic kid who can get that whole 6 feet, but most of the time they struggle pretty hard. I say, all right, back up 3 or 4 steps and take a running start and then jump over it. And with the running start, they clear it no problem. I say, that's what your frame is. Your frame is giving your technique a running start. It's allowing it to build up momentum. It's giving you that extra bit of speed and power that you're going to need to send that technique properly to the area that you're trying to get to. So framing is crucially important, and again, something that is easy to overlook, particularly among beginners. And when hear instructors all the time, work on that frame tighter. You need to frame off the hip. You need to frame here. You need to do that. Sometimes you even get some eye rolls from students where they're just frustrated with the fact that you're making them go back and do that. They just want to put that hand out there to intercept the technique. And I promise you that with proper framing, it's going to do a better job and it's going to look better. So that's something that we definitely need to consider, is that the framing is an essential portion of the block. Now, since this is an audio podcast, it's a little challenging to give you a very accurate description of what a technique looks like. Certainly, there's plenty of videos out there you could see on YouTube and such. But what I would describe a low block as is at least the framing portion would be you start with the hand that is going to block low, starting up by your opposite ear, palm in. Not directly up against your ear. You probably want to have it about the width of one fist away from your ear, so you don't get clocked in the head there, and then push your own fist into your head. So you keep it up by your ear, turned palm in, and the opposite hand, the one that is not going to be blocking, is straight out towards your groin as a defense. And if you take that position with one hand up by your ear and your other fist down by your groin, very naturally your arms come together and form sort of a barrier down the center line of your body. So the big secret here is that the frame is actually also a block. The framing motion can help protect you. I remember when my son was a young child, and of course, I would go to tickle him, and the first thing he would do would bring his arms in, his elbows in to protect his belly and his ribs, where I was, trying to poke and tickle him to elicit those cute giggles that children always have. And boy, the thing that he did to protect himself from my tickling attack would look an awful lot like a low block frame with very little training or no training at all. Just very naturally, he would bring his elbows in, his arms together. He would use his arms to protect as much of his torso as possible. So this low block framing motion is actually a pretty natural thing for you. I can remember that the late great master Tom Whitbread used to always talk. One of his sayings was, "Frame like you block, and block like you strike," which always struck me as very interesting. Frame like you're going to block, and block like you're going to strike. In other words, a half-hearted milquetoast frame is not going to result in a very strong block. So you'd want you to block as though you were throwing a punch or some kind of a striking technique. He would want you to frame like you were doing some kind of a striking technique as well. And doing a very strong, aggressive framing motion, well, guess what? One, it is a form of blocking, you're framing, and two, that energy you put into the framing action is going to be seen or manifest itself in the finished blocking position. So doing nice, we talk about nice tight frames, again in a low block position, having your elbows touching if that's possible, having your arms very close to each other. And then from there, you would extend that fist that's up by your ear down towards your groin, while the other hand that was protecting your groin a second ago pulls back to the side, palm up in preparation for a punching action. So that what we call push-pull motion is one hand is going down, the other hand is going up, retracting one while the other is extending. If you've ever seen a diagram of how pistons in an engine move up and down in like a V8 or something, and if you've never had kids, look it up on YouTube. Look how an animation of how an engine works, and the pistons moving up and down. One goes down as the other one goes up, and they alternate. And that's what our hands almost always are doing in our blocking and punching techniques. So again, not to harp too much on the framing motion, but one, the frame actually can be interpreted as a block and a way of protecting yourself. And two, it is the essential ingredient in having a good, strong block. So the framing, and then of course the proper ending position with your low block. Basically, we like to say off of the knee, in front of the groin, closed fist, of course, and with the opposite hand, the head started low, protecting the groin, is going to be pulled back to the side, palm up in a preparatory position for more punching. So that's what a proper low block should look like. Two more things that I should mention about the low block technique, which often takes beginners some time to become aware of and to master and to implement into their technique. One would be to, as you're throwing that low block down from by your ear down to in front of your groin, you would want to twist your body and twist your hips. And the hip motion and engaging your core into the technique makes it much more powerful. If you think about the energy that just a small movement of something the size of your hips being extended into something the size of your fist, which is obviously, if you compare your fist to the area around your hips, it's 1/20th the size maybe. You would have that much more power even with a small hip motion. There's one of the foundations of Tang Soo Do, and something that in many ways sets us apart from other martial arts, is our emphasis on hip rotation and using hips to generate power. And that is something that we spend our entire training career in Tang Soo Do working on, generating hips and finding the hips where sometimes they don't even seem to be any. But that is sort of the extra secret sauce that's going to give your blocks or your strikes that little extra bit of power and generate more force for your technique with more efficiency. So that hip movement, if you were to be throwing a right low block, your hand would start up by your left ear, palm in, and as you throw that low block down, to stop somewhere, even with your right knee in front of your groin at that level. Twisting those hips is going to give you a whole bunch more power, accuracy, and to be honest, it's the proper way to do it. It's actually the proper technique is to engage the hips like that. Another thing, as you're bringing that palm in from your ear, as you're turning it down, you're not putting that block out there in a back fist nature. You're actually turning your forearm a quarter of a turn outward. And this forearm rotation is another thing that's an important aspect of Tung Soo that is often not understood or appreciated by beginners, at least at the very beginning. And sometimes you can even see more advanced students who still haven't quite got the whole concept. But that forearm rotation is just another aspect, along with the hip twist, that's going to give us that extra bit of power. So, we'll be talking about punching techniques in a minute, where you start with the palm up at your side and your finished punching position is with the palm down, which means your forearm is going to go through a full rotation there, and that is going to create a different amount of force. I think about drilling a hole in a piece of wood. That a drill, at least most of the drills we know, the spiral drills at least, they twist and turn, and that's how they bore the hole. You don't just simply press something pointy into the board to try to bore a hole into it. You would have the drill bit twisting, much like our forearms will twist along with our hips to create that extra energy in that low block technique. Now, we think of our art as one that provides us with training in self-defense. So it makes sense that our first technique we learned would be a blocking motion, a defensive motion. But then, of course, to finish off an attacker or to respond to an attack, we need to know how to be aggressive and how to strike as well. The most basic technique is a straight-on center punch, which, once again, with your fist starting palm up, about next to your floating ribs, so not quite down at your hip bone, not all the way up by your armpit, but basically it's almost a natural position. At least it feels that way to me after all these years. Palm up right off your floating rib, which, if you don't know, it's the first rib of your rib cage that you can feel, where your organs and the rest of your torso is not surrounded by ribs, so that you can do things like twist and bend over without crunching up all those bones. So if you have that hand palm up at your side, and as you extend and push your fist outwards, you would turn it over, and at the last minute in extension, it would end up being palm down. So your fist is basically doing a 180 from being palm up to palm down and twisting in a motion as it is extended. Now, while one hand is going out, in most situations, I would say, that fist is going to be counterbalanced on the other side by the other fist retracting in a similar motion. So if you have one hand out that you've just thrown a punch where the palm is down, as you throw the next punch, that one will turn over and the palm will go back palm up, and it will return to your side by your floating ribs. And again, I talked about earlier the diagram or an animation of an automobile or a motorcycle engine, the pistons moving up and down. As one goes out, the other one comes in. And this counterbalancing, this push-pull motion that Master Volker often talks to us about gives you balance, and it allows you to transfer the energy efficiently. You can almost find a situation where the harder you pull back with your retracting hand, the more force ends up on the punching side. So that retraction and putting your hand away at the side is a pretty important aspect of the punching. People seem to think more of the business end, hitting with the knuckles of your fist and that final extension and impact. But the rest of the technique, the twisting and the retraction of the opposite arm, may be just as important as that. Now, before we throw that punch, we should probably make sure we're making a proper fist, which I've seen some pretty interesting interpretations of what a fist should look like. especially children. And once again, if they don't know how to make a fist, then we should consider ourselves blessed maybe. One thing I've actually done is taken not a Sharpie, but a dry erase marker and drawn a little dot on the second digit of the middle finger and the index finger, and I tell the children, cover that with your thumb, fold your thumb over that. Sometimes kids will even start their fists with their thumb tucked inside the fingers, which is a really bad idea. It's a good way to break your thumb. A lot of times they don't squeeze their thumb. Sometimes their thumb is sticking out and actually extends past their knuckles, which means if they hit something and they jam their thumb, they're probably going to break that thumb, or at least give it a good hurting that's going to make it really hard to hit anything else with that hand, in effect taking away that weapon from you. So you want to have that thumb curled tightly over the first two knuckles of the index and the middle finger. And then, of course, you're going to have the impact be with the first two knuckles of your fist, the pinky and the ring finger knuckles. Actually, if you take a fist, and even if you make a tight fist and you kind of squeeze on that outer side away from your thumb of the fist, you're going to feel it flex and move a little bit. But those first two knuckles, where your thumb is compacting them and holding them tight, those are really solid. They also line up nicely with the rest of the bones in your arm. So at full extension, you basically have a connection all the way from the top of your shoulder, which of course is attached to your torso, and you're making a nice biomechanical line there. And there's a good connection and a solid base for your punch. You want to make sure your wrist is nice and tight. You've seen, again, little dragons, karate kids hitting the heavy bag. And if they don't make that nice tight fist, we call it marshmallow hands. In fact, you'll see their wrist fold as they hit the bag with such force because they're enthusiastic, but then you'll see their wrist give, and of course that hurts, and then they become reluctant to hit the bag with any force again in the future. So you want to make sure that you're hitting with proper technique. One drill that really helps with this, and it's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but if you were to get down on the floor and instead of doing flat hand palm push-ups, if you rocked onto the front two knuckles of your fists and put your fists by your side and did knuckle push-ups, there's really no way to do a knuckle push-up without making a good straight line between your first two knuckles that are touching the floor, which again, if it's not padded, can be quite painful, but you know, it'll build character. And then you got to have that straight wrist going all the way up your forearm, and then you're supporting your body on those. If you do these knuckle push-ups properly, and you do, say, 10 or 15 or 20, and then you stop and you look, the only two knuckles that should be red would be the first two of your index finger and your middle finger. If you roll off onto the side where your ring finger and your pinky knuckle are, it's not going to go very well. Again, you're probably going to roll your wrist and might even sprain it if you're not careful. So having a good fist, obviously, you want to make sure that's important and taken care of, so that at the extension of your punch, you're not going to hurt your hand. One more thing I'd want to mention as we execute these techniques, whether it's a low block or a punch, that as we're extending those techniques, we are also exhaling with our breath. You might have heard someone in the gym trying to lift a heavy weight and grunting and groaning and yelling. We're certainly all familiar with the key up, which is the classical yell that martial artists do when they're trying to create a lot of energy. There is a connection between the mind and the body, and that connection is the breath. And of course, breath is life. So it's important for us to coordinate our breathing as well. So as those techniques are being extended, you should always remember to breathe. Holding your breath would be a really bad idea in either blocking or a punching technique. So, I've actually gone a little bit over my usual allotted time here. And I'd just like to reiterate that, one, I barely scratched the surface here, and there's a million other details I could go on about, but I think we've got off to a good start talking about the low block and the center punch and some of the basic concepts behind them, including the emphasis on framing. And I look forward to spending time discussing some of the other basic techniques in future episodes. But right now, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention and listening. If you would please refer this podcast to your friends or fellow martial artists. If you would like and subscribe, whatever your various podcast source is, I would very much appreciate that. And I look forward to you joining me for another episode in the future. Tung Su.